Good evening. I deal in experts. I'm not the expert. Tonight, politics expert, medicine expert, politics and medicine. But I'll explain it with Ted's rundown.
He traded in the mayor's chair for a chance to run in provincial politics and won. Now he'll take a stab at leading the NDP in the next provincial election.
As I'm announcing that I will be seeking the leadership of the New Democratic Party at the convention, which will be called for next year.
Webster talks with Mike Harcourt, the only declared candidate in the upcoming NDP leadership race. But first, the BC Medical Association is taking a stand against the provincial government on billing numbers and abortions. Where will the fight concerning billing numbers lead? And should there be a probe into abortion fees? In the studio with Webster, Dr. John O'Brien Bell, president of the BC Medical Association, on the state of healthcare in BC.
Dr. Bell, let's deal first. Dr. O'Brien Bell.
Thank you.
Let's deal first with the proposition handed down in court the other day that the British Columbia government has so too got the right to say who shall get a billing number, or presumably they always had the right to say if you couldn't for reasons, but who shall get the billing number. That would seem to me to be a good common sense step to help control the burgeoning cost of MSP.
Well, we found it, first of all, a surprising decision, and secondly, a disappointing decision. It's a disappointing decision because we had always assumed that as a profession that we had the right to set up practice where we wished, seek the opportunity to treat patients, and if they came to us, we made a good living, and if they didn't come to us, we had to pick up and move off elsewhere.
But that was in the good old days. Now, does the same doctor have the right when he comes out of medical school and is accepted by the college to move into a government tax-paid plant where he's virtually socialized, where his fees are guaranteed 100%, even if it costs the government or the people a lot of money to put him in business?
Well, I feel very sorry for the young doctor coming out of medical school today. To start with, the opportunity for a young British Columbian to get into medical school is less than it is in any other province in Canada. So they find it more difficult to get in. They go through, they come out at the other end, and they now find that they may be denied a billing number. They have two options, or three options. One, they can go to another province in Canada, but I think the chances are that this judgment will affect the other provincial governments, and they will introduce a similar sort of system. They can go south. Only Canadian graduates of Canadian medical schools are accepted into the States these days, so we can lose the cream of our crop to the States.
Clarify that. If I'm a doctor from Britain or a doctor from India and I'm probably qualified, can I not go straight to the States as a Canadian qualified doctor can?
I, as a graduate of a British medical school, do not have the right to cross the border to go south and practice medicine. Canadian graduates do. So America is able to claim the young Canadians if they wish to go south. So that's another option. The third option is that they can apply for a billing number. If they don't get it, they have been told that they can still practice privately outside the scheme. That's unrealistic.
That's silly.
You know and I know that today it's not viable to practice outside the scheme.
Is that where you suggest this might lead to a two-tiered system?
Well, I don't think that the government can say to the young doctor, you can practice outside the scheme, and at the same time say to the public, you cannot have private insurance to cover medical care. We have it for extended benefits. We have it if we go out of the country. So that if these young doctors are expected to locate and practice privately, then I think the government has moved us a significant step closer to two-tier medicine.
I can see a considerable problem in discrimination against women if women are required, as I've been told by some of the qualified doctors, and yet they can't get in, not because they're a woman, but because they're a doctor who hasn't got an MSP number.
Well, one of the things that we've been doing, and you know that we're a chauvinistic profession, well, we've changed. Over the last few years, the cohort of moving through the medical school at the present moment is 50% women. So over the next few years, the graduates coming out into practice will be 50% male, 50% female. If you then reduce the opportunity to get into practice, you slow down the determination to bring the percentage of women to 50% in the general medical body.
Do you plan to appeal this judgment?
We've got it in front of our lawyers at the present time. What I can tell you is that the BCMA will be fully supportive of Parry and Care in any action that's taken.
The Minister of Health, who's pro-life, by the way, in his private life, was telling me the other day that there is a committee working with the doctors and the government to find some way, I think it was about the regional allocation of doctors.
Well, we welcome Mr. Jewick's overtures to sit down with him and try and find a solution that might be acceptable to the government, because we recognise the problems
But
that they
there's only
have.
one solution acceptable to you. A qualified doctor who presents himself as a member of the college must be given an MSP number.
A qualified Canadian doctor,
What do you
and
mean?
particularly a qualified British Columbian. At the same time as these young doctors are being told that they cannot get a billing number, Canada is sending out to 20 different foreign centres across Europe, the Near East, North and South America, an exam which foreign medical graduates can sit, which if they pass allows them the opportunity to come and sit the qualifying exam in Canada.
And
Now,
gives
if you are a young doctor and you don't get your billing number, and you know that we as a country are actively soliciting the opportunity for foreign doctors to come into this country, you would certainly be upset.
How many passed those Canadian set exams in '86?
It's set in two centres. It's set in two in March and in September. And last year, almost 790 doctors passed the examination, and those doctors are eligible to sit the LMCC, which is the qualifying exam to practice in Canada.
But they now can be told at some stage, don't come to British Columbia, you won't get an MSP number as a matter of right.
Well, you know how difficult the charter is to tell anybody anything these days.
Well, I suppose so. Well, it's a continuing fight and you've lost the battle.
Well, we've lost the round.
Okay. I hesitate to raise the very subject. I do not think it should have been raised until the next election. But your friend and mine, Mr. Vander Zalm, has indicated his personal beliefs and that he is very concerned about abortion being used as a contraceptive measure. He wants to review all the abortion procedures. What do you make of that? What is your reaction to his provincial position that he wants to trim down abortions? Let's put it bluntly.
Well, we as a profession sit in no man's land. We have the pro-abortionists on one side of us and the anti-abortionists on the other side of us. And our job as a profession is to administer through the criminal code the section in respect of abortion. And the problem with the criminal code and abortion is that it's not definitive. If the continuation of the pregnancy is likely to endanger the life or the health, then the patient can be given permission to proceed to abortion. There's no legal definition of the word endanger. There's no legal definition of the word health. Now, we as a profession operate on the World Health Organization's definition of health, which is physical, mental, and social well-being. And if you're sitting on an abortion committee and somebody has an unwanted pregnancy and their application is in front of you, you can always read into that the problem of
but is there not in British Columbia right now great discrimination against women in different parts of the province who find it much more difficult to get a proper, legitimate therapeutic abortion than in others?
Well,
there's only half a dozen hospitals do them.
Well, as a result of the pro-life campaign over the last few years, many of the boards of hospitals, and the Surrey Memorial Hospital is a good example. We had a public trustee put in the Surrey Memorial Hospital because of the problem. It's true that these boards want to see the numbers of abortions reduced, but that only reduces the place where these abortions take place. It doesn't reduce the numbers because the patients either go across the border or they go into Vancouver or somewhere else.
Do you think Vander Zalm would have been better to keep his mouth shut and just carry out obeying the law? Because presumably you're all cooperating and not doing unnecessary abortions and watch for where it might be used as contraception.
Well, I think it's insulting to suggest that doctors are not complying with the requirements of the criminal code. I think that doctors who sit on the abortion committees and doctors who request abortions, given the tremendous campaigns by both these two warring forces, are very, very careful today that they don't do anything for which they can be criticized. And remember that these abortion committees are voluntary committees. The doctor is doing this work voluntarily, and the doctors who sit on this committee are doctors by law who do not do abortions.
Oh, I see that. Do you think Vander Zalm might be chintzy enough to go for your $104 fee? Can he negotiate that down to $50 or something?
Well, you know, my response to him was that if he wants to solve the society's problem of abortion by manipulating the fee, he should stick to his principles and declare it no longer a medically required service, and then see what the public feel about it.
What would the public feel about it?
I'm just there as a doctor to administer the criminal code.
Your calls to Dr. O'Brien Bell, President of BCMA, after the break. I can solve your billing number problem, Dr. O'Brien Bell.
Yes?
All these old chaps 65 and over, they should be made to retire, the old doctors.
Is that what BC TV would have said when you were 65?
Go ahead to Dr. O'Brien Bell.
Hi, Dr. O'Brien Bell. I'm just a little bit worried about this government of ours that is taking the position of a professional that goes to school for a great expense and time, and then they dictate to them where they can and cannot work. I mean, is it going to get down to the point now where it's not a free enterprise system and a person can't establish a business of their own? I mean, I think this is about the only business I know of in Canada that the government regulates so staunchly. And if it's going to be like this, then is the next step the government saying to us which doctors we can and cannot go?
Well, that's one of...
I'll hang up and listen to your answer. Thank you.
That's our concern, and we're pleased that Mr. Jewick has made some overtures in respect of discussing it. But we've come a long way from Mr. Justice Emmett Hall's original dictum in respect of the introduction of Medicare in the middle 60s, when he made one of the fundamentals, freedom of choice, which he said means the right of the patient to select the physician or dentist and the right of the practitioner to accept or not accept a patient except on emergency or humanitarian grounds.
But I can pick any one of 5,000 GPs, whatever they are, or 10,000 GPs, if they have billing numbers, unless I want to pay it myself.
You can...
I've still got freedom of choice.
Yes, but you haven't got freedom of choice if at the same time many of those doctors who come out of the medical schools are expected to practice outside the plan.
But did you ever anticipate when the Emmett Hall thing came down that you would really finish up as a totally socialized medical profession?
Well, for me it's déjà vu. I've seen it before.
You déjà viewed it in the UK. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Dr. O'Brien Bell. I'd like to know if the government is allowing new doctors to get billing numbers if they practice up north, or if it's completely restricted.
Well, one of the problems of the restriction of billing numbers is that if you do go up north, you get locked in because of the geographical limitation. Now, the reason that they grandfathered those of us who are in practice already is that there are a large number of doctors servicing the northern and isolated areas, and they go there some for 5 years, some for 10, some for 20, but many of them expect at some time in their careers to return to the lower mainland or Victoria.
Do you suggest this will tie them in?
Oh yes, if they get a billing number in an isolated area, it's geographically limited.
Could they sell their practice after a while?
If they could get somebody to go into take over in a limited area, but it's much more difficult to get somebody to take over.
Are you suggesting the government might restrict the MSP number to that practice in that location?
Well, it is geographically restricted. That goes hand in glove with restriction of billing numbers. It's a geographical restriction.
That's a tough one. I didn't realize that.
And of course, once you lock somebody into an isolated area, it becomes difficult for them to move back to a less isolated area at some other point in their career.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'd like to ask if the BCMA in the near future, will reallow graduates of foreign medical schools categorized in Category 1 and 2, or 2 and 3 rather, to practice or come back to practice in BC, rather than now that it's only Category 1 medical school graduates. I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the question, because the BCMA doesn't have any right to allow anybody to practice. I expressed to you earlier a concern, and of course I came in as a foreign graduate, but that was 20 years ago when there was a need for graduates to come into Canada. But today we don't have that need. Now there is one area that is a problem, and that it is difficult to convince young Canadian graduates to move into isolated areas. That's a fact of life, and we have to try and address that. And one of the problems is that we have to see that the training that they get postgraduate is sufficient to give them confidence to go into an area.
There is a vast preponderance of GPs all down the lower mainland in Victoria, of course.
Well, there's a vast population down there.
There's only 1 to 300 doctors. There's 1 doctor to 300 odd people, I was told by Duick the other night.
The question is whether those doctors are needed or not. That's the argument, whether it's a need rather than an overutilization.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack. I think the problem is that why shouldn't the doctors go up into some of these areas here? I don't fully believe in what the doctors today here on your show is saying about them being locked in. I think that's one of the reasons why the Canadian government is applying to some of these other countries, because these other doctors from other countries don't mind going up there. It doesn't make much sense to me to have a whole bunch of doctors up in the Okanagan where the weather's good, and they have some of the high specialists up there, and down in the lower mainland, it's just you have an overpopulation of doctors down here.
Well, we've made big strides in the doctor population in northern and isolated areas. Each doctor in the northern and isolated areas gets a 15% premium on their medical service plan fees. And areas that 10 years ago didn't have a doctor do have a doctor today. For example, there's now a doctor at Tumbler Ridge. There wasn't 10 years ago. So we are making strides. I accept the point that the caller makes, that we can do more, and we have to introduce medical students during their career to isolated and northern areas.
But you still want you want the untrammeled freedom to practice where you like with an MS with a number.
That's correct.
Go ahead from Victoria.
Dr. O'Brien Bell, I am one of the young GPs just out with no billing number, and I'm just wondering, would you advise the young GPs in this province to hang on for a few years or seek relocation elsewhere? And the second question is there a plan for a rational taking over of older practitioners' practice by the young GPs when they near their retirement age, rather than having these practices sold to someone else with the down payment for the practice and then having a billing number transferred?
First of all, I've always enjoyed being a family doctor. If I was coming in today, I would expect to cross over this particular problem and settle happily into practice. I'm hopeful that the comments made by the new minister, who after all inherited this legislation,
right,
will allow us to solve the problems of this young doctor in Victoria. So I would say to him, hold on. Secondly, as he builds his practice over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, he is building an equity into it. There is an equity in my practice. It's part of my retirement expectation. And when I retire and somebody comes in to replace me, they will take over the equity in that practice.
They'll compensate you for your practice.
Yes, it's part
You're
of it.
afraid, of course, that the total control of MSP numbers might remove altogether a doctor's value in his practice.
Well, that's already happened, because there have been doctors in this city who have been told that there are too many doctors in their particular area and their number won't be replaced. And if that happens, the equity in their practice goes immediately.
That has happened.
There have been doctors whose number has not been replaced.
That's quite astonishing, thank you. Do you know there's not a call in abortion?
Perhaps we've solved the problem, Jack.
Hello? Oh, nobody there. Missed it. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, you, ma'am.
Yes, Dr. Brian O'Bell, do you feel that abortion services could be better provided in a freestanding clinic? And is the BCMA interested in changing the criminal code to allow this type of thing?
Well, doctors are interested in having the criminal code changed so that there is a definitive set of guidelines under which we can operate. Our problem is that it's so wide, possibly endanger the life or the health, is so wide.
But what else can it be? You couldn't specify the clinical conditions under which a woman should have an abortion.
If society has concerns about the present situation, then society has to set the rules. All we do is carry out what society has set in the criminal code. Now, should they be in freestanding clinics? If society wants to go for abortion, I personally think they should be outside the hospital system.
Altogether?
Altogether.
And it doesn't have to be used as a contraceptive device, does it?
No, but they're nothing but trouble inside the hospital system.
And expensive?
I mean, if you have pressures on the operating room and there are abortions, the abortions have to be done because of the time frame.
Are you saying that you're in favour of Morgenthaler-type clinics?
I'm saying that if society wants abortions, then they should be done outside the hospital system.
My grateful thanks to Dr. John O'Brien Bell, President of the BC Medical Association. Best of luck, old chap.
Thanks very much.
And I'll be back with, what's his name, Harcourt, after the break. I have a problem. I've been around too long in many ways. For instance, I was accused the other night of being a friend of Carney's. Well, I am, but I divide the two things between friendship and politics. I've been accused many a time of being a friend of Bill Vander Zalm's, but I divide the two things. And I've been accused of being a friend of Mike Harcourt. And I'm just going to treat Mike Harcourt as if I've never met in my life before. Is that correct, Mr. Harcourt?
You're always fair and objective, Jack, and...
Who speaks for the NDP lame duck leader, Bob Skelly?
Well,
because as you have been swamped with this incredible love affair, the media, and Vander Zalm, where is the NDP? It's gone, lost forever. You've got 20-odd seats, but no presence in the province.
Well, I think what's happened, Jack, is that there's been a holiday season. Some people have been out of town.
Oh, since the election,
And,
September 20...
No. I think since the election on October the 22nd, what has happened is that for a month or so, the House wasn't in session, it wasn't sitting, and the new MLAs had to be sworn in. And then, of course, we ran into the Christmas season. We're just getting geared up again.
Okay.
The NDP has been very outspoken on the issues as they have come forward. Bob Skelly is fulfilling his leadership functions, and of course we have a leadership contest coming up in April, mid-April, 90 days.
So therefore, there will be lame duck leadership if and until you, forget about Monroe for the moment, if until you become the leader of the NDP.
Well, it's not lame duck. It's a situation where any party that is going through a leadership contest faces a period before there's a new leader sworn in. So I don't know why you just make it available to the NDP. That's happened with the Liberals. It's happened with the Social Credit Party.
It's a wee bit different here because the election is over.
Yeah.
Vander Zalm is riding high, white and handsome. And your boy who, you know, was defeated doesn't seem to have any presence, and he's over on the island or someplace. Should you not be speaking out on every major issue for the NDP now?
Well, the House is going to be opening, Jack, pretty soon.
March?
No. It'll be opening, I understand it, sometime in February. So that's just a few weeks away.
Okay. What do you think of the fact that Vander Zalm has been given an hour's free, unquestioned time on a major radio station? Are you going to demand the same free, unquestioned hourly time when you're the leader of the NDP? Well, Sundays at some time or another?
I think it's an unusual innovation, and I think that they're public airwaves, and I would think that there would have to be equal access of the two parties that form the legislature in our legislature.
Is it not unfair to the NDP at the moment?
Well, as I said, Bob Skelly has asked that he have similar access, and I agree with that. I've talked to Bob about it,
and what have
I think
they
there
told
should
him?
be similar access. Well, I think so far they've told him that he's the premier, and therefore he is the premier. And rightly, Bob Skelly says, yes, that's true, representing 49% of the people that voted for him, and the province, of course. And I represent 43% of the vote, along with New Democrats, and we are the two major participants in the legislature. So he has asked for similar
Oh, but they can
sort
give
of
it to him
program.
when he's premier.
No, he's the leader of loyal opposition, which is a very important post in a parliamentary system, Jack. So we're suggesting that there be equal access.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
What about dear old Jack Monroe? Jack was dropping vague hints yesterday that he might like to go for the leadership. Why is he trying to annoy you?
Oh, he's not annoying me at all, Jack. I told you before Christmas that our leadership campaign was going to be the same.
Would you like to see Jack run for leader?
Well, I'm
mean, to give it some
basing our
fight.
campaign on the fact that there may be just myself or there may be 10 people. But our campaign is already underway, and we're prepared for either way. I've made my choice, and the people that support me have done that. And Jack is a very substantial and distinguished British Columbian. It shows that somebody of substance, the ex-mayor of Vancouver, is running for the leadership. Jack, who is a very distinguished senior member of British Columbia Society, is looking at it. I think that's important, that people are seriously looking at a post where they could become the next premier of
You
British
welcome
Columbia.
the competition, but you don't really think it's serious, do you?
Well, you'd have to talk to Jack about that. All he said, I think, is that he's thinking about it at the present time, which is basically what he told me last year.
What did you think of Vander Zalm's talk about tightening up on abortion and reducing the fees and having reviews and surveys?
Well, I think it's an indirect way of subverting the law of the land, which is the federal law that abortions under certain circumstances are to be permitted in our society, and I think that's supported by the majority of our citizens in Canada. And I think if you interfere with that directly or indirectly, you're interfering with our rule of law.
Now, it must be an embarrassment to you that the NDP is riven in twain, is it, or in two? Split in two, when you've got people like Bob Williams backing Pat Carney all the way on the 15% export tax, and Broadbent and the other NDPers attacking it as a sellout. What do you think of the current 15% solution for our exports of sawn lumber to the United States? Are you with Bob Williams, whom I've heard saying such a thing, or Ed Broadbent, whom I've heard, it was Nystrom, I think, attacking such a thing?
Well, I think there's two perspectives. Here in British Columbia, New Democrats have said for a long time that the way we treat our forest is scandalous. For the last 20 years, we have not been replacing trees. We have not been taking enough from our forest industry in the way of fees from the use of those public utility and putting them back into the forest. And that's been our position for a long time. So to see $300 million a year available in British Columbia, which is what will come out of this, instead of being collected in the United States and put into the forest, is good for British Columbia.
Do you think that Vander Zalm should commit himself to put it straight into the forests?
That's exactly what it should have been going into before. We haven't been collecting that for the last 20 years, and the forests are suffering because of that. So to reinvest that and create hundreds, matter of fact, thousands of jobs is very important. Now, the concern that Ed Broadbent and the Liberals and some Conservatives have is that the way that the United States is involved in this is an interference with sovereignty. And there's also a concern that this may lead us into some other problems in terms of a precedent for negotiations in the trade.
And I can give you another one.
Yeah.
If that money is put into...
But there's no conflict. I think there's a federal concern about Canadian sovereignty and about, is this already getting us off to a bad start in the trade discussions, and are we going to do the same thing with steel, natural gas, and other areas, auto pact? Is this the kind of negotiation that is going to lead to Americans telling us basically how to monitor and how to run our own country? And those are legitimate concerns.
But if we increase our stumpage rates across the board, that will put us at a further disadvantage in other markets. At the moment, the 15% only applies to the American market. If we charge it on stumpage, it will collect more money and increase our products elsewhere, won't it?
But the advantage is that we're going to have a healthier forest for our children down the line.
Okay, Mike Harcourt is the name. He's not the leader of the NDP yet. Won't be until when?
Well, there's a convention, April the 10th to the 12th.
All I wanted was the date. Your questions after the break. old are you, Mike?
44 last week.
And already they're tearing down your careful structures at Vancouver City Hall, gave themselves a big increase, they scrapped the consent agendas, going to knock away at the fair wages conditions you had for contractors. You know, you let all your supporters down by giving up that job.
Well, I listened to some of my showbiz friends who told me the time to leave is when the audience is still applauding him before the tomatoes, Jack.
Maybe it's something I should consider too. Go ahead to Mike Harcourt.
Yeah, good evening. I'm glad to see you're running, Mike,
Thank you.
for the leadership of the NDP. I wish you all the luck.
Okay.
There's only one question I'd like to basically ask you.
Yep.
Is you are a strong supporter of Mr. Rankin, and when he run for mayor, I just want to know if you happen to lose the leadership of the NDP or lose the next election, will you behave in the same way he did?
He called everybody a bunch of jerks, you may recall.
Yes, definitely.
Do you remember that?
Oh,
of
well,
course, the answer is no. Michael couldn't do that if I were his worst enemy and he hated me. Could you, Michael?
Yeah, it's not,
That's
not my
not
approach to
Harcourt.
politics.
Yeah.
I think what you have to
wonder
do-
if you would still support him today.
I think that what you have to do in politics is to realize that it's the great free market in a pluralistic democracy, and all you can do is to give it your best shot. If people don't want to vote for you in sufficient numbers, that's their right, and they've
Accept
made a
it.
decision. Accept it.
With grace.
Agony of
Yeah.
defeat.
Thank you. The agony of defeat. Go ahead, please, to Mike Harcourt.
Welcome back, Jack.
Thank you.
Mike, guy that worked for you during the campaign, glad you made it. I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the purchase of Kootenai Power by Americans? I'll hang up and wait for your answer.
Good.
Well, we think that there were some other options that could have been looked at of the local community, and it could have been part of an economic development initiative to help the Kootenays get out from a very difficult time. So we have some very major concerns about that. Matter of fact, if you look at the number of sellouts of major British Columbia businesses over the last 3 or 4 years, it's massive, Jack. If you look at the engineering outfits have been sold to Montreal, to 2 major engineering outfits. We have had Dayon and Block Brothers sold to Toronto real estate outfits. We have lost CPR, we have lost Macmillan Blodell, we now have Kootenai Forest, or the Kootenai utility. And so we basically, this is part of a pattern under the social credit government that's very, very disturbing.
It's also part of the economic pattern. CP just sold because they wanted it off their back and they got a reasonable
No, but I'm
price.
saying if you add up the number of businesses that were headquartered, were BC-based, that have been sold out over this present government, it's very, very disturbing. We're losing more and more of our corporate muscle elsewhere.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mike, I was wondering, what's your opinion on the non-union and union for like the ALRT crossing, where most of the money is going out of the province?
He's
We're talking about the one across the Fraser River.
Yes.
Well, I look at the union outfits that built, matter of fact, under budget and ahead of time. The Cambie Street Bridge did a superb job. The same thing on the stadium. The same thing on BC Place, most of BC Place, the Trade and Conference Center. And I think that we have a good tradition of the union firms amongst the highest standards in the world, and to have to go elsewhere to get the talent, I think is puzzling.
But such is the fact that in today's delicate markets, the non-union people are entitled to win some of the contracts.
Yes, but the basis on which those contracts are awarded, Jack, I think is important. And one of the reasons that I think that it's wrong what the City Council is doing to get rid of minimum standards is that some of the non-union construction outfits aren't paying into apprentice programs, aren't supplying on a joint basis their workers with proper medical and dental and pension programs. And so they're underbidding, say 5–10%, but undercharging their workers out at 40% less than the going rate. And what's the benefit? I say there should be some fairness in terms of protection for those workers in those jobs.
Is cost benefit sometime for the customers.
That's right, and that those people have got to go out and pay groceries, et cetera, too. So I think getting rid of the fair wage concept at City Hall is a negative step.
The day of the big increases for the big unions, all powerful, seems to have
it's finished.
gone.
It's finished because we're in a very difficult economic time in this
Go ahead, please.
province.
Hello, Mike. I have 2 questions for you. The first one concerns a statement you made just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
concerning the right of British Columbia to refuse to fund abortions. You said that they would they would be breaking the federal law if they did so. The second question is, do you think that it is right if society wanted to legalize murder, rape, child abuse, robbery, etc., that they should have the politicians would have the right to pass this legislation? I believe that it is just as wrong for the politicians to pass laws that would allow the murder of unborn children.
Well, sir, that's your individual opinion. And you see, the courts and Parliament have not taken that position. And the majority of people do not have your minority viewpoint. And what I'm saying is that is the law of the land. And it is one that is embodied in the criminal code. It is one that is part of the statutes of Parliament. And it's not up to a provincial premier to directly or indirectly to go against that.
Go ahead, please, from Nanaimo.
Yes, good afternoon. I'd like to know how Mike Harcourt, how he feels about the Quebec separation issue. I see the Quebec wing voted to separate from Canada.
Which Quebec wing?
The NDP Quebec
no, that's
No,
not the
mixed
position of the. It's not the position of the Democrats at all. Matter of fact, we're strong Canadians. We believe in a strong federal state.
In fact, you got your first Quebec MP from the Tory party across the floor.
Oh, no, we're very strong federalists and very strong believers in Canada.
It's mixed up. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Two quick questions, Mr. Harcourt, while you've still got some municipal background in you before you forget it all.
Oh, I won't forget it.
And the one question is on this reassessment of the rail lands throughout the province by the BC Assessment Authority. A lot of the municipalities are really getting skinned on their tax base on that one. And the second question is, Mr. Vander Zalm in 1982 called his cabinet colleagues gutless because he wanted to introduce a county system within the province. Now, I'd like to know exactly, because I've never had a clear explanation from anyone, Jack Webster or any of the media or anything, exactly what this county system proposal of his entails. Because there's some very big questions that have to be answered on that. I see a report has just come out on transferring certain responsibilities from the provincial government to the municipalities, but no one knows what it's going to cost anyone. And I think where there's smoke, there's fire, and I think this is a backdoor way of getting at something. But I'd like an explanation what you know about these two issues.
Well, okay, the first one, the railroad lands, what they did, Jack, for your viewers, because it's complicated, they changed, the assessment authority changed the way that railroads are assessed on their land. What they did is average it across the whole province. And that average then applies whether it's up in Atland or whether it's in downtown British Columbia. And because the value of the railroad land in urban Atland is probably 1/10 of what it is in downtown Vancouver or Surrey or New
Atland
Westminster.
gets more and the lower mainland gets less.
Get a heck of a lot less. It could cost in Vancouver over $500,000 of taxes that we would lose.
Social credit move.
Yes.
To average the assessment of rail lines
right across
the province. To put the revenue more fairly into the upcountry instead of downtown Vancouver.
No, I don't know the reason for it, but I do know that the mayors in the Lower Mainland are very upset about this because it's going to take a lot of taxes away from their rolls, and it's an issue that the Greater Vancouver Regional District is taking up with them.
Didn't even know about it.
Oh yeah, it just happened, matter of fact, very quietly at the end of the year.
The Vander Zalm County system.
The Vander Zalm County system is essentially a Metro Toronto system run rampant. In other words, in the United States, where they would be in charge of all the hospitals, the education system, they would put it into a county system. Policing, everything would be under a county or a Metro Toronto expanded. So it's just means that you have a far more substantial Greater Vancouver Regional District.
If I can just interject on that one thing there. Are you still there?
Yep.
He was saying that he believed that one of the facets of this county system of his is that he believes he would appoint an MLA for that county to be basically the chief guy. And I mean, if we want to talk about ward healing, he's the ultimate example of it.
Well, I haven't seen the proposal.
Thanks for coming. I've got to leave you there. I have a little thing to do about the aquarium, a nice little happy item for the new year, which I insist on using. We shall watch carefully for the convention on April 10th.
Jack, we hope to see you there. The Hotel Vancouver.
Up to the break. See that? That's a killer whale. That's Bill Reed's killer whale. And what am I doing at the aquarium? Well, I'm here in a very positive mood. One of the miracles of Vancouver is how people respond in a real emotional emergency and physical. You know what happened last fall here at our magnificent aquarium. Some, I was going to say idiot, some culprit, some evil person, poisoned with copper sulfate, part of the system here, and killed hundreds of saltwater tropical fish. And the response from the public was fantastic. We're going to go and meet the incredible Newman this morning, Murray Newman, and see just how he feels about this magnificent response to the aquarium's crisis, because it's all been replaced. Plus, well, here I am. And here is Dr. Murray Newman, the director. What is this indignity you've subjected me to today?
Everybody has to have one of these, Jack. Now, anybody who goes behind the scenes because of our security precautions. And after the break-in and the pouring of the poison down into our reservoirs last November, we decided we had to tighten up the place a great deal. So you're number 22.
Will this be enough, do you think? Can't happen again.
Well, we've got a man with a fierce dog here at night, and we've got all new locks on the doors, new security system, additional staff. So let's hope it doesn't happen again.
All right, now let's go and look at some of your replacement fish and tell me the damage and the recovery that's happened at the aquarium. Murray, we're now in the saltwater tropical fish section, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Was this the only part of the aquarium that was, quote, wiped out by the copper sulfate in the reservoir?
Yes, this is the only section of the aquarium. This gallery, the tropical fish gallery, and this was our primary tank that we've just seen here with all the beautiful damselfish and the angelfish and the butterfly fish, surgeon fish.
Is this the first tank that's really fully replenished to the standard you had before?
Yes, it is.
Now, tell me about it. The value of the fish, you used a figure of 60,000. Was that the kind of wholesale purchase price over the years of all the fish? How many fish did you lose?
Well, we lost almost 800 coral reef fishes. And of course, many of them were in the aquarium for 10 or 15 years, and they'd grown to great size, and they were pets, and to lose them was a terrible thing.
Must have been a heartbreaker. Were you here that very morning when it was discovered?
Actually, I was on a speaking tour, and Gil Hewlett, our curator, telephoned me when I was in New England, and he coughed a couple of times, and he said, you know, Murray, I know you don't like to hear this sort of thing, so I was wondering what he was going to say.
What was coming?
And then he said, well, all of our coral reef fishes have been wiped out by somebody breaking into the aquarium. It was just absolutely awful. But, you know, it's terrible because there's so many of these fish that get to be old friends. And you've got really a beautiful and interesting fish. You've got things like the lionfish or the...
I never thought of fishes having personalities.
They have a lot of personalities.
Well, yes, but fish...
No, the fish. The fish are very, very personable here in these coral reef fish.
Look at that. This was one of the fish wiped out?
No, our sea turtles survived.
And the sharks behind us survived too, did they?
And the sharks.
So you made an appeal for money to replenish.
That's right, yeah. We made our appeal, not only to replenish, but also to compensate us for all of the damage that was done down in the basement, the extra staff we had to put on, the cleanup of all of our filtration plant.
How long did it take the money to come in?
Well,
and you got how much?
You know, we got over $100,000. I'm not sure exactly how much has come in.
So it was more than enough, despite all the trouble?
It's more than enough, yes.
Who sprang to your rescue? Did everyone come to your rescue apart from the people who gave the money? I mean, how come you got all the fish in so quickly?
Well, you know, everybody was concerned. Everybody was worried. We've had tremendous support. I mean, for example, in fisheries, we've had support from Fishermen's Union, from the fishing companies, from the Department of Fisheries, from everybody. It's just
airline
incredible.
Companies.
Yes.
Transportation.
Children's groups. You know, little children have donated money, and grandparents. A grandmother came along and wanted to buy the the Royal Grammas for us. So
The Royal Grammas?
The Royal Grammas, yes.
They are a fish, I presume?
They are a fish, yes.
We haven't got one within sight at the
Well,
moment,
we
the
may
Royal
have
Gramma.
one in here, as a matter of fact.
Ah.
These beautiful purple and yellow fish are the Royal Grammas.
Grammas?
Yes.
Spell it.
Gramma.
Oh, Gramma. Royal Gramma. Did Gramma buy the Grammas?
Yes. And these are top
Just
hats
before I go,
here.
we're passing a tank that's fairly empty. I believe you have some special plans for filling that tank.
Yes, we're organizing an expedition to the Marshall Islands in the tropical Pacific, Jack. You want to come?
Yeah, I'd love to come. Where are the Marshalls? North of New Guinea?
Well, they're just north of the equator and between Hawaii and the Philippines in mid-Pacific. And Continental Airlines has provided us with a couple of free tickets to go there. So we're going to collect a big collection in here. We'll come back with just very beautiful coral reef fishes.
Will this be your only expedition to replace fish lost in the in the vandalism?
Well, we're also thinking about going to the Great Barrier Reef, and we're working with Qantas on that. We're thinking of flying to Cairns and organizing a collection out of Cairns.
Cairns, that's Australia, isn't it?
That's Australia, yeah.
Well, you're going to have a busy summer. How many will go in the expedition?
Well, we're organizing a members tour. You know, we have 38,000 members of the aquarium. So we're taking a group of something like 24 people out there, and then a couple of staff members are going to join us.
And they'll pay the shot for the trip?
Yeah.
The members will put up the money and get a wonderful holiday and help catch the fish?
That's right, yeah.
And you yourself, of course, never actually go out and catch and kill a poor fishy.
Oh, we never go out and kill them, no, but we go out and catch them once in a while, sure. And because, you know, we'd like providing a very beautiful place for them here, and you know, this is going to be a great thing. You should come along, Jack, really.
I certainly will. Day after tomorrow, we'll leave for the Marshall Islands. Thanks very much, Murray. Two guests tomorrow at least. One is Jack Monroe, talking about the 15% and about leadership. And the other one is Louis Brayer of the Native Council of Canada. Boy, some of the claims that are coming up, you know, they're just incredible. It should be interesting, though, tomorrow with Webster, as usual, at 5 p.m. precisely. Stay tuned for Tony.